for this webinar. My name is Katrina Davidson and I'm one of the service managers for Care First. And I'm joined by my colleague Maverick Newell, and we're here today to talk about domestic abuse. I just wanted to hand over to Maverick quickly just to let him introduce himself and give you a little bit of his background. Over to you, Maverick.
Thank you. Hello everyone, my name is Maverick Newell, as just been said, and I'm one of the advisors here at Care First. And I generally provide practical advice for anyone who rings and wanted to know their rights or how to move things forward on a situation. My background prior to coming to Care First is that I've worked with children and adults who've experienced domestic abuse, and I've also worked for Citizens Advice, where I'd regularly see people coming in through the door who wanted some advice as well.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so through this webinar, I hope you'll gain a bit of a basic understanding of what domestic abuse is, the different forms of domestic abuse, what some of the behaviours of an abuser can be, what are some of the signs someone is experiencing domestic abuse. We'll give you some information on further support and steps that you can take if you or someone you know is suffering from domestic abuse. And finally, at the end, I'll go through how Care First can support you, the services we provide and how to get in contact. If we leave questions until the end, then we can answer them fully. But please, as we go through, if you do have any questions, just feel free to type them into the box and we can review it at the end. Everything you ask will be answered anonymously, so you will not be recognised. Okay. So as you can see on this slide, phone calls and website hits have dramatically increased to a number of different organisations since the lockdown measures have come into force. Calls to the National Domestic Abuse Helpline rose by an amazing 120% overnight on the 6th of April, and traffic to Refuge's website rose by 700% from the previous day. To put a little bit of perspective on that, the 700% increase alone is more than the total hits that website received for the whole 7 days prior to that. So those extreme rises are believed to be due to the attention on domestic violence from the media and the realisation of the need to concentrate on the subject. In general, on average, the National Domestic Abuse Helpline calls have risen by 49% since the lockdown began. And when we compare it to figures from previous years, it really sheds some light on how important it is to ensure people have the correct support throughout lockdown and beyond. For example, in 2019, the Office for National Statistics, the ONS, released some figures for the year ending March 2019. And it was estimated that 2.4 million adults aged between 16 and 74 experienced domestic abuse. And that equates to around about 1.6 million women and 786,000 men throughout the UK within that year. And the police recorded an increase of 24% in recorded domestic abuse crimes throughout that year as well. So we really do understand that the stay-at-home measures put pressure on the home environment and can cause additional anxiety for those who are experiencing or are at risk of domestic abuse, along with the constant changing environment and just the general feeling of unease and facing the unknown. We want people to know that help and support is still available to you no matter what. For anyone who feels that they are at risk of abuse, it is so important to remember that there is help and support out there, including police response, online support, helplines, refuges, and other services, including Care First. And please remember the household isolation instruction as a result of coronavirus that was introduced by the government does not apply if you need to leave your home to escape domestic abuse. Okay, I'll pass over to Maverick for the next slide.
Okay, so what is domestic abuse? I mean, a general definition around domestic abuse says domestic abuse is generally defined as incidents of controlling, coercive, threatening, and violent behaviour between individuals that have been in an intimate relationship that includes family members, Women aren't generally considered to be most common victims of domestic abuse. However, known cases of men, children being victims of domestic abuse have risen significantly in recent years. So what are the forms of domestic abuse? And we'll go through these with you. So physical abuse is seen as somebody's being hit, having things thrown at them to cause them physical harm. Sexual abuse is if somebody might be trying to manipulate or coerce somebody into doing something they don't want to do sexually. And that could also, and sexual abuse can happen in or outside of a relationship, including within marriage. And the person may be pressurizing someone to have sex or engage in sexual activities, hurting them during sex and pressurizing them to have protected sex and other sexual activities. Psychological and emotional generally can be seen as being combined and can interrelate with each other. And psychological abuse is can include calling names, manipulation, blaming the individual for the abuse, and it can include belittling comments, put downs and accusations, and generally making the abuser have low self-esteem and believing they are the ones to blame for what's been going on. And like I said, both psychological and emotional abuses generally can be interlinked. Coercive control is when an abuser uses a pattern of behavior over time to exert power and control. And that's can also be linked to an emotional and psychological, which again is generally seen as somebody who uses those forms of abuse is about trying to gain control over the individual and to continue to abuse them in the manner that they choose to. Financial abuse is when somebody takes control of the overall finances, which means the individual has no resources to money, so may have no opportunity to go out and they to spend any money. All the finances are controlled by the one individual, which will include them having bank accounts. The abuser may give the person who's been abused, they may just give them a small amount of money to get by on, but the abuser generally has all control of the finances within that situation.
Okay, so following on from that, what are some of the behaviours of an abuser? Similar to what Maverick was saying, they could be destructive criticism and verbal abuse, which can be things like shouting, mocking, accusing, name-calling, and verbally threatening. They could use pressure tactics, for example, sulking to make you feel bad or guilty, threatening to withhold money, disconnecting the phone and internet, or taking away or destroying your mobile phone, tablet, or laptop, taking the car away, or even taking the children away, threatening to report you to the police, social services, or mental health teams unless you comply with their demands, threatening or attempting self-harm and suicide, withholding or pressuring you to use drugs or other substances. They could lie to your friends and family about you and what you are doing, and they can make sure you have no choices or decisions in everyday life. They could be disrespectful by persistently putting you down in front of other people, not listening or responding when you talk, interrupting you on telephone calls, taking money from you without asking, or maybe refusing to help with childcare or housework. Even breaking trust can be a behaviour of an abuser. Things like lying to you, withholding information from you, being very jealous, having other relationships or breaking promises and shared agreements. They can make sure you are in isolation. As we all know, we're all in isolation anyway, but they can isolate you further by monitoring or perhaps blocking your calls, monitoring and blocking emails or social media accounts, telling you where you can and can't go, and preventing you from seeing family, friends, or relatives, and even shutting you in the house. They can make threats. Some things to look out for can be making angry gestures, using physical size to intimidate, shouting you down, destroying your possessions, breaking things, perhaps even punching walls or arming themselves, wielding a knife or a gun, and threatening to kill or harm you or your children, and threatening to kill or harm family pets, or threats of suicide themselves. Sexual violence, if someone is using force, threats, or intimidation to make you perform sexual acts, if they're having sex with you when you don't want it, or forcing you to look at pornographic material, if they're using constant pressure and harassment to make you have sex with them when you don't want to, forcing you to have sex with other people, or any other degrading treatment. Physical violence can be the most obvious due to its visual markings, from things like punching or slapping and hitting, even biting, pinching, kicking. Perhaps they pull your hair, pushing or shoving or burning. Anything can, that physically impacts you can be considered physical violence. And some abusers may even use denial, saying things like abuse doesn't happen, saying you caused the abuse, to make you feel bad for them being angry, saying you wind him or her up, saying he or she can't control their anger, and being publicly gentle and patient, or crying and begging for forgiveness and saying it will never happen again. No matter what the abusers are doing, it is not okay, and domestic abuse is a criminal act. If you feel threatened, it is absolutely paramount to seek some help, no matter who you are or where you are.
So what are some of the signs of someone is experiencing domestic abuse? Physically is most probably maybe one of the easiest ones to see, although generally the person who's been abused may try to hide that, but bruises or marks to the skin, or regularly wear clothing, accessories to hide parts of their body, such as necks and arms. So if somebody's constantly wearing something, particularly if it was on a hot day and they were wearing long sleeve clothes, or clothes you wouldn't be expecting somebody to be wearing in the warmer weather, that may be a sign that they're experiencing or trying to domestic abuse and trying to hide something. Emotional abuse, you may well see an individual who's got low self-esteem, seemingly fearful, agitated, anxiety, and constant apprehension, and extremely apologetic or meek. And it would also say that people may have those symptoms in different categories. Sometimes somebody at work may be very strong-minded and very focused within their work, but outside at different times they may well exhibit some of the behaviours just associated, as I said, with low self-esteem. So it doesn't always have to be that somebody who's got low self-esteem is going to be of a maybe in a particular job. It could be anyone could be experiencing domestic abuse. And also you may see somebody through their behaviours, they may be reserved or distant, cancel plans at last minute, and dropping out of activities, and exhibiting excessive privacy to personal life, and isolating themselves, and often late to appointments. So again, and people may see that and they may view that as somebody's just being a bit disorganised and being late, or cancelling meetings or cancelling things at the last minute. But it may well be that they're experiencing domestic abuse that's actually caused them to do that. So what steps could you take if you know someone is suffering from domestic abuse? What we would advise, and the first thing you do is make them aware of, in the way you can, that you are there for them to talk to, and that you're quite happy listen and don't make any judgments of the individual. Try to reassure them that it's not their fault, that they shouldn't give the abuser the excuse that they've caused it. And then it's about looking into information to see if you can signpost or get more information yourselves from what you can do. And on the following slide, we will just highlight some of the places where you may be able to get some advice for yourself or for the person who may be experiencing domestic abuse. So there's the National Domestic Violence Helpline, there's the Men's Advice Helpline as well. And then there's various ones, there's the one for LGBT, Refuge and Respect. All those organisations will have information about what is abuse, how to identify it, and where people get support to try and get away from their abuser and safely for themselves, and if they've got children, for the children as well.
Okay, so I hope that very short presentation has given you some awareness of what to look out for, what domestic abuse is and everything. I'm just going to play a very short video. It's only a few minutes long, and it's just about Care First and the services that we provide. And it will also give anyone a chance to write down any questions in the questions box, and we'll be able to answer them afterwards. So bear with me while I get this going.
Care First. We provide 24 hours of the day.
Sorry, everyone. I've realised that there's an awful lot of feedback on that, and not quite sure why it worked earlier. But if I go on to this slide, just to let you know that Care First, we're a 24-hour-a-day confidential counselling line that you can phone 7 days a week. We also provide information services. The team that Maverick is part of, they are open Monday 8 AM to 8 PM, and they can answer any questions, any practical questions you may have. We've also got all of our online support, which can be accessed through Lifestyle. The link is below, and all the slides will be sent out, and we can send this out after the presentation. Maverick, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Just to clarify on one point about the advisors, because you said we're open Monday from 8 till 8. We're open, we're available Monday to Friday 8 till 8, and we do generally sometimes we do have advisors on a Saturday morning. So those are the times where we are available, and we generally do have people available. Most of them counsellors are about 24 hours a day, and generally is 24 hours a day. We do have counsellors available who are skilled, and all my colleagues, myself in the advice team, we've all got various backgrounds, but we've all been aware of, and we can support and advise people who may have experienced domestic abuse or wanted to know what to do. And like I said, we've got the counsellors who can provide emotional support to individuals should they contact us.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we've got one question, and I don't know if this is one you can answer, Maverick, but it's what should you do if you're scared to talk to someone about domestic abuse in case your partner finds out?
Well, you can, depends on where it's starting. If you've got privacy anywhere, then if you can make that call to somewhere like Care First, that could be quite good to speak to somebody confidentially. If you could do that, the other places you could go, what you could try and do to get information, if you've got access to a computer, you can get the information via online. And I know on the I think it's on the Women's Aid website, they have a thing where you could be chatting to someone, and if somebody was to come in the room, you can click on a button which automatically changes a page so that they couldn't see what you were looking at and what information you were trying to get. But it can be quite difficult to specifically say what you can do, because it is going to be about trying to find that private space, and where you can go, and whether that might have to be at work, maybe speaking to a line manager if they was to know your situation and to see if they could give you the opportunity to have a bit of a private time so you can make that phone call, or whether there's a family member who you may have spoken to who again may be able to give you a private time and space to enable you to make those calls. But it's about seeing if you can find somewhere you can go to have that conversation. And it could be another way potentially of doing that if you were in a difficult situation at home. I'm thinking of somebody maybe who's having some problems with finances and debt. You could be going into, maybe say you were going to go into a local citizens advice bureau, and with that as a reason for doing so. But and in there you'd be able to speak to somebody, and they would also be able to give you advice as well. So there may be other routes where you could find that space and opportunity to have that conversation.
Okay, brilliant. We've got a couple of other questions as well.
Yeah.
We've got one that is, how do you support someone who has been in domestically abusive marriage for over 30 years, feeling they are unable to leave despite support being offered?
That can be quite hard, really. I think I'm sort of alluded to it earlier. I think that one of the most important things, because may well be the case that the person, whether the person believes it's their fault. So I think the first thing how you can support them is truly believe them, make no judgments, and sometimes it can be easy for an individual to be thinking, and why haven't you done this before or something, but it's not. Domestic abuse is a very complicated and how it impacts on people. But I think it's letting the individual know that you're there for them, and to be and actually be there, and it's allowing them to, if they need to talk to you, then allow them to talk to you, without making judgments. And if they need you to support or go somewhere with them, and you've got the opportunity, then do that. So be that person who goes to speak to somebody. But it's there. I think the most important thing is letting them know that you're there for them and you're not making judgments, and you will support them in any way that you can.
Brilliant. Yeah, we've got a few more. So is the service for employees only, or could it be relatable to no employees? Is that non-employees? So the service, the EAP, is for employees. However, the charities that we've mentioned and those online services, all non-employees can access them. Do you have anything to add to that, Maverick?
Yeah, can I clarify a bit on that? It's not quite as clear cut back to a certain degree, because we have lots of contracts with lots of different employers, and some of the contracts we have with some of the employers, some, and a very few, I will say, actually have made it available that it is for family members as well. So it depends on where, and some people access it via some insurance policies, and some of those have allowed it to be for family members. But by and large, I would say it is for employees. So what would happen is, if it was to ring into us, we've got a database where we can check what the entitlement is for any organisation we support. So we quite easily be able to say to an individual, no, this is just for an employees, or whether it is for family members. Family members can ring in, and they may be able to get a one-off. So a family member rang who was wanting some advice. I would, as an advisor, I would signpost them where they could get that advice from, but I wouldn't actually go into any detail about what the advice they wanted. And again, if a family member did ring in wanting some counselling from one of the counsellors, then the counsellor may give a one-off piece of support and then signpost them. But it is very limited to what a family member would receive.
Yeah, exactly. So if family members were to call in, they wouldn't be turned away. They would be helped. Okay, so we've got a few more coming in. are people now receiving face-to-face counselling sessions to give people an opportunity to discuss their concerns in private? Sometimes making calls can be difficult. Do you want to answer that, or do you want me to answer that?
I'll see if we can do it between us. At the moment, between face-to-face at the moment, that's not happening. Where it's been done via the social media type Skype. I'm not quite sure which ones they are. I'm not sure if Catherine, if you know which ones they are, but we're not doing face-to-face at the moment, and that's down because of the COVID. Why we're not doing that. So we wouldn't be doing face-to-face as such. If somebody didn't want to speak, again, as you can see on the slide, there are online resources that somebody could use, and that may be a way of getting someone speaking with one of our counsellors and getting some support that way.
Yeah, exactly. So due to COVID, obviously, we can't do the face-to-face, so all sessions are either online via video conferencing, and it's normally via Skype. It has to be encrypted for privacy and security, but counsellors can talk to you about that. Just move on to the next question. Are there any resources for people who have broken free from an abusive relationship but still suffering psychological damage?
Yeah, there are resources available to people who have experienced domestic abuse, and I think in the first place, instances, a GP might be a good port of call for somebody. They may be able to know what local resources are available to you, but there are definitely resources around the country in different areas, and different areas have different resources that be available. But most definitely there are support available to people who've experienced domestic abuse and have been able to flee that.
Okay, brilliant. So that's all of the questions that we've gone through. If anyone has any other questions, please feel free to ask them. I might just try playing that video once more, see if it'll work. So feel free to stick around if you want to try and give it a go. If not, thank you very much for listening. And if you've got any questions, please feel free to follow up with them.
Okay, thank you for listening as well.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm not quite sure what's happened with that. It did work earlier, but I'll make sure I send it out with the slides. So thanks for listening, everyone, and see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.